If you're new to Journey, I'm Dave, one of the pastors here, and I just want to say welcome to everybody who's watching online today. As we continue kind of our dual coverage, the COVID stuff still happening, so folks who are at home today and all of you who are here. So welcome, we're finishing up our series called FearLESS today. Hey, it's Thanksgiving week. Anybody excited about that? Oh, friends, this is going to be great. It's you got. How many of you got to spend $60 or more for a turkey? Okay, just ham. I mean, it is a great season to be hungry because, food shortage and all that kind of thing. But seriously, folks, I'm praying that you guys have an amazing Thanksgiving and that you get to experience some beautiful time with family and friends. And so that's what church family is all about too. And that's one of the reasons we encourage you to get connected so that if you are away from family or if you are in a season of life that maybe you don't have anyone close, that's what church is about, man. It's just getting connected. And so you have a family built in for you to connect with, especially at these times. So we just want to tell you thanks and hope you have a great Thanksgiving. But also, just as I'm thinking about this past weekend and this whole holiday season, Friday was the 27th anniversary of my daughter's birth. So little Micah, 27 years ago, Friday, Lori gave that big push, and there she was. And it was, I mean, just thinking about childbirth and the whole experience. Now, some of you have gone through it quite recently. Some of you, it's been a minute. Some of you haven't ever had that experience, thank the Lord. Because, let's be honest, it's crazy. Childbirth is crazy stuff. I went through it 4 times. On the cheering side, yay, come on, push. I got that end. But just think about all the things that happen for this experience. I mean, the poor woman who, finds out they're pregnant, they usually do it because they're like, what's going on? I don't know, I'm just really sick. And you find out, well, there's something growing in you. That's why, it's something happening inside your body. Hormones start to change. I mean, your body goes through these real massive adjustments as it prepares to create and sustain another life. And those changes aren't always fun, Lori tells me. And the crazy thing is your body goes through not only some hormonal changes, but I mean, literally, it's like some creepy stuff happens where you're sitting there and all of a sudden a little thing goes, your body literally contorts as a little person inside's fighting around and jostling and trying to make room and sometimes just wanting out, I think. And that's creepy stuff, like kind of an alien movie. I remember just watching sometimes as Lori's tummy was, she would show me and you just see like a hand just go straight across. Or a knee or like somebody's face going, it's kind of like, ah. And you don't know what to expect, especially when you're new at this. I remember the first time we went through this, it's not only scary, the process, but the time when it comes for delivery, I mean, things get kind of crazy. We were in our little apartment in Santa Barbara, and we'd been counting the hours, and Lori was on the phone with my mom, who was she was an OB/GYN nurse. She was just kind of, really, really tuned into all this stuff. So she was telling us, prepare this or whatever, was she at our house? She was at our house. She was there because she had come down knowing that time was coming. And Mom was there, and so she was helping us, coaching us, and telling us then when to go. And when the moment came, it was like, okay, we need to go. I'm like running around like, she's like, what are you doing? I'm looking for my glasses. They're on my face. But didn't even, because, you get that panic. You grab your bag and you go. And then there's the hours and hours and hours of things happening where they're getting you all hooked up and they're deciding whether or not you get Pitocin or one of those things to speed it up or slow it down or... It's crazy. And then the actual time for delivery comes, and it's like, you ever go through the classes where it's, doesn't help. It might have helped, actually, it might have helped her, but on my end, I was like, I don't know, but there are things that happen in that room that nobody should know about. I mean, it's scary, and I had one buddy of mine tell me that he literally did not identify the voice that came out of his wife when he was helping. He was trying to be comforting at the birth of their first child, and he was trying to rub her, and her head spins around a couple times. She goes, "Stop touching me!" I mean, he talked to me about a deliverance situation afterwards. Dave, have you ever done that deliverance ministry? Okay. There are moments, and Lori was like the most silent, pusher ever. I mean, she just kind of, you just like deep down within, but she did not scream. There was a lady right down the street going, "Ah, yeah, 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 yeah." And it terrified me. I'm like, oh, my wife's going to get to the yeahs any minute. No, she never did. Lori was just like, literally just all business, man. It was the only thing that happened was I was trying to push on her back because, a little counter pressure helps. And she just says, "Push harder." That was the only negative of the whole experience. The rest of it was unbelievably cool and beautiful and scary. But seriously, if it weren't for the delight of the time after, of the little baby being held in the arms and just, the first connecting and the little eyes that look up at you like, what are you? This whole feeling of where the bonding takes place, and then their first steps and their first words and their first meal and their first real diaper change, all those lovely things that happen. I mean, if it weren't for all those little just joyful experiences and the moments like we just shared this weekend as we gathered to celebrate my daughter, her birthday, if it weren't for those, I don't know that anybody would go through it. And that's why men don't. I think God knew that it was like if some of us had to go through that, it's just like, hey, I just don't really see the point in having kids. I mean, why go through all that trouble anyway? But times like these, times like those moments, times where you get to experience the birth and then the life. It's not about the birth, it's about the life. It's about what it brings, right? That's an impressive. I mean, it changes everything. I mean, it literally, Chase and Elle, just our little grandkids are just getting so big, but it just watching the first steps, and as, Marceau was just kind of toddling around Disneyland on Saturday and on Friday, just kind of, it's just so wonderful. And that, friends, is the image I want you to kind of keep in your mind. I want you to think of the first Christmas, and the first trip to Disneyland where they're really aware of things, when they're just everything is starry-eyed and beautiful and it's wonderful and it's like, this is so cool, life is so good. I want you to keep that picture in mind for the rest of the talk today, because the rest of it's ugly. No, I'm just kidding. It's not really ugly, but it's definitely different from what you might expect a Thanksgiving message to be about. But as we wrap up the series, I want to talk today about the fear of the future and the fear of the unknown. Because a lot of people that I hear talking about the world that we live in and the crisis of our current moment, kind of the struggle, the great war that's taking place just in our culture and in our world over ideas and which ideology is going to thrive and take root and supplant the other, and which one's going to win. Our views or their views, our values or their views, their values. These kinds of things are pressing in on us. And we feel the results of certain political choices. We feel it at the gas pump. We feel it at the grocery store. We feel the results of a pandemic and how it's managed. We feel it from one city to the next. You feel the difference in things. And friends, all of this creates tension, all of it creates frustration, all of it creates anxiety, because all of it creates fear. And when we're afraid, we do stuff we wouldn't normally do. When we're afraid, we react in extreme ways, and we can react in some really ugly ways. When we're afraid, we're not so compassionate. We're not so thoughtful. We're not so aware of another person's feelings or concerned about another person's life. When we're afraid, it becomes more about my survival, my need for whatever it is, oxygen, food, stuff. This is what takes priority. So many of us can lose ourselves in moments like this, and we can lose track of what we really are about and what the story that we're in is all about. And it's easy to get distracted by all the pain and the problem and the politics and the current world struggles, and it's easy to forget that we're in a very well-orchestrated, handcrafted, designed moment and experience that is going to end up at birth. I love the way that Paul said it. And again, I'm between glasses. Forgive me. cataract surgery, and they haven't got my eyes figured out yet. Paul said this to the church of Rome. He said, I consider that our present sufferings are not worthy of comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Catch this. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage and decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Paul's wanting to remind us that the pain that we are experiencing, the pain that our world is going through, it's intensifying from that moment, when Jesus came on the earth and just basically introduced the kingdom, the reign of God that had begun in a brand new way through the presence of God's Spirit that lives in his followers, in the apprentices to Jesus. He's saying that whole time, from then to now, to the moment where we actually see the culmination of all this with the return of Christ and the judgment, and then the great and glorious day of the Lord when we all get to experience the fullness of all he's promised. Friends, this stuff that we're experiencing, he said it's our present struggles won't even begin to enter our minds when we see the other side. That's the only reason we had 4 kids, because Lori forgot how painful it was once she got them out. And it's like that once you get them in your hands, and once you're walking and loving and celebrating and seeing what amazing humans they become and the delight they bring to you, you kind of like, you see that it was worth it. Not only is it worth it, but it was like you celebrate the fact that God allowed you to experience this whole thing so that life could become part of yours. And this is what he's saying, that, man, this is it. In a spiritual sense, we are preparing for the great birth, the renewal of all things. And all of creation, not only we ourselves, but all of the world, all of creation is in the process with us of going through childbirth. So as we kind of look at this, the question I want to ask today to frame our conversation is the question I think some people I'm hearing are asking. When it comes to this idea of the problems that we're facing, when it comes to the world, and it comes to the future, and it comes to the frightening things that we see as the unknown, the question a lot of people have is, how bad is it going to get? And here's the real question. What if it gets worse? What if it gets worse? We live in a scary world. We live in a scary time. Nothing is stable. Everything that we used to hold dear, it seems to shifting. It seems like everything is being shaken. We're wondering and we're worrying, man, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen with the next elections? What's going to happen with riots? What's going to happen with this? What's going to happen with my retirement? Will I have enough money? Will I have a roof over my head? What if things get worse? And the good news, friends, is things are going to get much worse. But then there's a birth. You're just beginning to see the problems because the world is literally on a collision course with rebirth. Things will get worse. The closer a mom gets to the moment of delivery, the crazier it gets. But in the midst of all this, Jesus tells us as his followers that bravery is an option because faith in him is a choice. There's always a choice in how we face it. We can be brave and fearless in spite of our circumstances because, friends, we have a Heavenly Father who's crazy about us. Jesus taught us about the Father's love. We've been told that everything we need has been provided because of Christ's incredible riches. He has provided these realities for our future that are secure, just as secure as the earth we're standing on, more so. He's given us his Holy Spirit that will live inside of us, will lead us and guide us. Jesus wants to remind us that everything our Father has promised is going to come to pass because God is in charge of everything. Even when he's given over the current moment to the powers and the presence of the dark realm, even though the spiritual forces in the heavenly realms that are against God and against the believer, against our walking with him, he's got a plan to bring everything to a point. It's a big funnel, and it's all getting to that place where it's just kind of, it's spinning right around the drain as it passes through. Friends, we are getting closer and closer. And let's jump into the scriptures this morning to discover Jesus' predictions about the future, what they mean for us. I'm going to do this from Matthew chapter 24, beginning verse 1. As Jesus was leaving the temple grounds, his disciples pointed out to him the various temple buildings. So here they go. One day they're leaving. They're just walking through the temple. They've been through probably one of the temple services. And as they're leaving the grounds, they draw his attention to look at the massive stones. Some of these stones are like 24 feet tall. I mean, talk about massive. How did they move these things without caterpillars, without cranes? But they did. Some of those stones were so big, and they think about the gold and the silver that had adorned the temple over the hundreds and hundreds of years. Think about the intricate carvings in those buildings. It was staggering wealth, staggering beauty. That's what the temple represented. And in those buildings, those images, those disciples, I'm sure they were thinking, now that Jesus has come, now that the Messiah has arrived, these things will be with us forever. This is just going to get better and better and better. It's just going to go from glory to perfection. And it's just going to, Christ is going to, pretty soon he's just going to go ahead and take the throne away from Rome, and he's going to take over the world. And this will be the center of all human dwelling and thriving, this temple. That's what they're thinking as they're walking past it. And they're just these same buildings that they thought would be permanent, that Jesus would for sure would make his home spot. That's like, this has got to be Jesus' launch point. Those same stones and that same temple that they were drawing his attention to and declaring how wonderful and glorious that God had become, so good as to come and dwell among them in that space. That same temple would be completely destroyed in 40 years. And some of those same disciples would live to see it. This sounds like a warning to us right here and now that we're going to see things in our lifetime. If they went through that 2,000 years ago, and he said the beginning of the birth pains have come, how close are we to birth? He just said, man, the warning is that there are things that they never thought possible. They thought the temple would stand forever, and yet in 70 AD, the Romans grew tired of the Jewish rebellion and the insistence that their God was the one true God and that they had the right to the throne of the world through Jesus. And they basically destroyed the temple, knocked every stone down. Later, Matthew 24:3, later Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and said, tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world? And so then Jesus kind of breaks it down. And I'm just going to touch on 4 key crises that he said would take place before his return, before the end of the birth process. He begins to prepare his disciples not only for the things that he wants them to expect, but pretty much he wanted to warn them that what was coming would not be easy. It would not be pretty. It would not be a time to play church or to play Christian or to pretend you're part of the family. It would be a time of winnowing when it would be very clear who believes and who does not. It'd be a time of temptation. Many people would turn and walk away from faith. It'd be a time where things would just get worse and worse. And this is what he said in verse 6. He said, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Man, if you got a Bible and you don't have that underlined, you might want to do that. When you hear that certain people are in power and certain things are happening, what is his advice? See to it. In other words, draw your attention back to whatever it is that makes you aware. Don't panic. Don't be alarmed. Such things must happen. Not are going to, they must. But the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation. Kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death. Wait, there's a little just side note. You're going to die. What? Wait, we were talking about the coming kingdom and, yoke is easy and burden is light. What are you talking about? We're going to get our heads lopped off? How does this fit in? At that time, many will turn away from the faith because of me. You will be handed over and persecuted, put to death, and you'll be hated by all nations because of me. Many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. But, and here's the choice, and here's that moment for those of you who want to be in the delivery room, for those of you who want to experience life after life, for those of you who want to go on forever and ever and ever in this eternal kingdom of heaven. He who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom, it will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations. And then the end will come. Now, just quickly, the 4 key crises Jesus was talking about. The first one, it's going to be a time of spiritual crisis. He said, don't let anyone mislead you. Many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and they will deceive many. Notice that verse that he said that there will be many deceivers and many deceived. I don't know about you, but it seems like in church world, religion just seems to be kind of created in such a way in our culture, in our doing, not on God's, that we create many messiahs all the time. Our family's been walking through this podcast. It's all about the rise and fall of an enormous church, a mega church in America called Mars Hill, and it's a very, very fascinating podcast. And we're listening to it, and there's so many things that just resonate with us about the way church culture has gone to celebrity preachers and celebrity pastors and all these. We have made this thing into some kind of another form of Hollywood. There's just so much of it that you and I have talked about, over the last several months, as I've said, how God has reoriented my life back to apprenticing under Jesus and away from, the big, shiny, next new thing, and how we look at this culture. And how many people have been swayed under the incredible voices of these massively gifted individuals whose inner lives were something far different from their proclamation. How many times has a church got to just fold in on itself before people begin to realize many will look like the answer to my longings. Many will come in my name. Many will come claiming Messiah status. Not most of the pastors and teachers I know, even some of them that have made really bad mistakes, are not claiming to be Messiahs. They're not claiming to be Jesus or the sent one from God. But what we can find, though, is the preparation that Satan is using to get people's eyes off of what really matters and onto the big and the flashy and the cool and the neat and the next. And multitudes and miracles, large audiences, spectacular deeds, throngs of people, displays of power. This is what people want. We live in a Hollywood-saturated environment where everybody wants the next great movie, the next great Netflix show, the next great experience, the next great video game. Give me some reality that's better than my reality, and man, you got me. Give me something to believe in, something to pursue. Give me a cause to celebrate. And when it happens that they link faith or religion or the promise of some eternal blessing to the yearnings that are already inside of you, the desire for something transcendent, the desire for something glorious, the desire for something significant, when these people use the truths of your own yearnings and your own brokenness and our own desires, and they link them to something other than Jesus or the kingdom life or the words of God that were displayed in Scripture, beware. He said there's going to be a lot of them coming, and they're going to know how to weave words together that make it sound really, really good, but they're going to take you away from your first love, not towards him. You'll find yourself attached to something beyond Jesus or aside from Jesus. Be aware. Those are the dangerous things. Man, you'll be fooled. Slick appearance, celebrity popularity, miraculous performances, those things are coming. And then 1 John 2:8, it says, "Dear children, this is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now, many Antichrists have come. And this is how you will know it is the last hour. Who is the liar? It is whoever denies that Jesus is the Christ. Such a person is the Antichrist. And he said, it seems like everybody's looking for the Antichrist, right? The guy who's going to rise to power from Revelation. We read about this guy who's going to take authority over the world. He's going to be like setting up his own one world government. That is true. But John said there's going to be many Antichrists. Antichrists, he said in his definition, is anybody who denies Jesus Christ or leads people's love away from the one true God. That's the Antichrist. Seems like everybody's looking for the one. You need to be looking for the many. You need to keep your eye on anything that draws your attention away. And not everybody who makes mistakes, not everybody who presents something, without the greatest care is an Antichrist. But you will know when they draw the glory away from Christ to themselves. When Jesus gets diminished and they get raised up. Take the glory from God and put it on themselves, danger, danger. And that's one of the first signs. And then he goes on, and it'll be a time of political crisis. Verse 6 says, and you will hear of wars and threats of war. But don't panic. Yes, these things will take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation and kingdom against kingdom. He said the world will be in upheaval politically. There will be so much trouble going on. He goes, it's like nations are just going at each other. It'll kind of be like Korea, North versus South. It'll be like China, Taiwan, and all these other places. It'll be like Russia and all the things. It'll be like what we're seeing currently right now in our world, only it's just going to continue to get more and more and more. And it's going to be like the people are all turning in the Middle East, who are all turning against Israel and wanting to see their demise all at once, and all the forces that are starting to turn against Israel from our own nation, our own country. It'll be like the very civil war that seems that's brewing right in our own midst, right in our own city and country and state. It's just like all over the place. You're going to see this. Jesus said, don't freak out. It's not the end. He said there'll be a time of planetary crisis. There will be like famines and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of birth pangs. In the Revelation, John talks about the sun and moon and stars will like be shifted from their place, and everything that can be shaken will be shaken, so that what cannot be shaken, God and his kingdom, will remain. In other words, he's going to take you and rattle you loose from everything you're using as a crutch, as a substitute, as a holdover from your past life, so that you will have only one thing to choose. Will I cling to God or some other story, some other belief system, some other thing, my own scientific beliefs? What will you cling to? Because the planetary crisis is also going to be more and more. And I don't know how you feel personally about, the political aspects of global warming, but the Bible is clear that the world is going through trauma. And I think that's describing a lot of what we're experiencing right now. I think this is true. I remember, though, in the 60s and 70s, it was like, even the planet's groaning, Paul said in chapter 8 of Romans. I remember when we were growing up, it was so common all through the 60s and 70s to hear somebody talk about the rapture. That was how they kept people kind of coming back and kept people, doing right things, and for good reason. You scare me good enough, I'm probably going to listen to you. I'm going to be down at the altar every time they offer the opportunity to go back and say, God, forgive me. Remember what I did this week? Okay, I did it again. I'm back. I don't want to miss going to heaven, because every week we were reminded that if you would die today, would you go to heaven? Or if Jesus were to come back today, where would you be? And I'm kind of like, not in good place. So let's make sure we take care of this. And we were told over and over. They even had movies. Left Behind. Anybody remember Left Behind? All these things that we talked about and preached about were warning signs that Jesus was coming back any minute. And it was so much the chant of the 70s and into the 80s that people started writing books to tell us all about exactly how it was going to unfold. And then that came out in 1988, the book 88 Reasons Jesus Will Return in 88. And then he forgot to come back, and so they changed it to 89, and the 88 and 89 reasons. We forgot one, we're coming back, I don't know if they're on 2021 reasons or whatever. I don't know where they're at now. the fact of the matter is, they were wrong. And many predictions have been wrong. Because anytime somebody tries to pigeonhole God and say, this is exactly how it's going to happen, this is when it's going to happen, this is all, we've got it all worked out. Our charts, we finally discovered, we unlocked the keys of the kingdom. We know exactly how it's going to happen. Just be aware it's not going to happen that way. It's not going to happen in their time frame. Now, there's a lot of brilliant men out there, and I'm going to do a whole series on this in the coming year where we're going to talk about the return, what it looks like, what to be aware of, and how to prepare, and what we're supposed to be about. But for today, it's very interesting that we learned that one of the keys to this was Israel coming back to be a nation in the 40s. And the things that started unfolding and going into play after that. A lot of Christian leaders jumped on that and said, man, Jesus is going to come back any time now. It's going to happen any moment. You better be ready at all times. Which is true. He could come back anytime. And you must be ready at all times. He warned us in Matthew. The whole brides, didn't oil and lamps and didn't have enough oil and that kind of thing. You need to read that. Jesus said no man would know the hour or the day of his return. Not even the Son, only the Father. So Jesus said, hey, God's keeping some of this. The Father's keeping some of this to himself. So all of you who think you know, the eternal story. He want to get our eyes off of what we can see and what's all around us and the news that we're reading and up to the scriptures where he said, hey, there's an eternal kingdom that's being birthed and it's going to break out into this whole world. And when it happens, it'll be like the birthday of the dreams you've always had. It'll be like the birthday of the greatest longings you've had in your heart for connectedness to something transcendent and real and eternal and strong and beautiful. It'll be like the greatest day of your entire life if you don't lose heart. If you don't let yourself be drawn away. If you're not stolen away by these other things. If you're not distracted. If you're not fearful. If you don't shrink back. All of this is part of the plan. And Jesus prepared his disciples by this really interesting pathway, sending them into trouble. I just can't help but think of the story where Jesus had a really, really busy ministry day, and the disciples were with them, and they were all exhausted, and Jesus said, you guys go ahead and get in the boat and meet me on the other side, and I'm just going to spend a little time here recovering with the Father. And the guys were out in the boat, and of course the storm comes up, and these are fishermen. These are guys who did this for a living. They've seen the worst of the worst, and yet all of a sudden, these men who thought they knew the storms, and they knew the sea, and they knew the boats, they were screaming out for their lives. They were literally fearful of their death, and they then look and see a ghost walking towards them. Totally freaks them out, and they begin to realize that ghost looks a lot like Jesus. That's Jesus walking on the water. The storm that we are terrified of, the trauma that is rocking our boat, the reality that we're currently living in is just looking like water skating for him. It's like he is surfing and we are panicking. He's just cruising and we're crying. I want his reality. And so Jesus looks and Peter says, Lord, if that's you, tell me to come to you. I want what you have. And Jesus said, come on. The invitation is open. Come on. I'm outside here enjoying the experience where God rules over all creation. You want to be a part? Come on. I'm showing you what happens when the kingdom realities eclipse the realities of your present moment, and your vision line goes from what you're seeing to what is happening in the real world. And he said, come on. Jesus calls to Peter. Peter gets out of the boat and heads over to Jesus walking on the water. And then what did he do? He looked at the political readings in newspaper print. He reads the latest, whatever, Fox News poll. NPR says this about, he got his eyes off Jesus. What's happening right now is a lot of people they're finding out, where do your eyes go when the storm gets big? Is it going to Jesus, or has it come a little bit short, still on the wave? Is it still on what's happening in our economy? I don't every time I go to the gas pump, I'm reminded of who I don't want to vote for and what I don't like about politics and what I really believe about certain people. And then I'm reminded also, this is a wave. This is a momentary blip in my current comfort. There's the reality. There's the coming. There's the birthday. I don't know the exact day, but I can see that little thing forming and it's moving and it's kind of creepy, but it is coming. It's going to bring a whole new experience to all of humanity. Are we ready? Are you going to get out of the boat? Are you going to look at Jesus? Are you going to walk? Because Jesus prepares us for the great day by giving us smaller days of struggle and storms. You're in one. Where are your eyes? You're feeling it. Where's your hope? You're skating or you're sinking. Which is it? This is your moment. Friends, as we close, as we get ready to head out and do some family stuff this week, and as we get a chance to spend maybe a moment of reflection on the good things God has brought into our world, I want you to go out with this reality. I want you to go out with this concept that the kingdom of heaven is not just about living with a little more zen in your life. Oh, it's just a little more peace, I hope it's peace. I'm not just asking you to just kind of trick yourself into believing that things are going to get better. Friends, what I told you today is the reality. Things are going to get worse before they get better. But the better is better than anything you've ever dreamed of. And Paul said, our minds can't even wrap around what God has in store for us. So friends, today, as we prepare for that, as we close out our FearLESS series, let me just ask you, are you fearless in the face of what's happening? Are you scared to death, or are you not? Are you just like totally unafraid of death? Are you prepared for that reality, or are you just now discovering that there's an option other than fear and trauma and panic? Are you just now coming to the reality that, oh, this is getting real now? I have to really come to a conclusion about what I believe and where I'm headed and what it means and what God is doing. I have to reach some decision. I have to come to decision point about what all this means for me. Because stuff is getting real. And I want to know where I'm going. I want to know where I'm headed. I want to know what God's up to. I don't want to miss the birthday of the incredible life that God has for me. And friends, as we wrap up this series, I want to give you just a moment to respond. And the worship team's going to come, and they're going to lead us in song. But I don't want it to be about the song entirely. I want it to be about the Spirit of God speaking to you and the connection that's taking place between you and Him. The conversation that's taking place in your spirit as God just kind of whispers or nudges, or in some of your ears, He's screaming. What do you believe? Where is your faith? Where is your hope? Don't miss this birthday. Don't miss this opportunity. I want to give you an opportunity to respond. And in some of you, it's going to be a response of, God, I've never really entrusted my life to you. I can always tell because I'm still trying to control everything. And I freak out when I can't. And I get angry and I get frustrated. And I strike out at other people. And I start accusing others and pointing fingers and getting hateful. And that's kind of how I know whose strength I'm looking to. That's how I know who I'm really believing and trusting in. And it's terrifying. And some of you, it's like, hey, I've already passed that point. I've made a full surrender of my life to God. And I'm working out some, that transformation stuff as I'm being sanctified. In other words, putting off the old and learning to put on the new. And I'm walking in that, but I'm just struggling in an area of my life. And I need to make a full surrender. I need to ask God's help, and I need to get some counsel on this. For some of you, it's going to be more of I'm through a lot of that. It's time for me to give back. I'm wanting to be one of the persons who goes throughout all the world. And how can I do that? How can I participate? Where can I give? Where can I serve? How does my life now get to make a difference in the lives of others as we prepare for the great and glorious day of birth, of the glorious return? Some of you, it's like you're not sure what you're at, but God is speaking to you today. I would encourage you to respond. Let's bow our heads. Father, as we close today, our hearts are just like so mixed because of all the different things that are happening. All the different stuff that's going on in our world and our culture and right now in the news. And it's a fearful time. We have friends who are dying of COVID. We have friends and family members who are going through life-changing illness. Life-ending, it seems. All the craziness you said is part of the story because it's the storms, it's the little storms before the great and glorious day. And when all is revealed. And I just pray, Lord God, that it's doing the right things to us, that we're getting our eyes on Jesus and off of the storm. And I pray you'd speak to us broadly and graciously today, powerfully, as we each make decisions about how we will respond to the moment we've been given, what our faith will look like going forward, and what we'll prioritize first. Thank you, Lord God, and we just now worship and entrust our lives to you. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Friends, would you stand with me? We're going to sing together. This time be a time of reflection and response as we worship.